So this is a profile that was first on The Cut, just talking about the terrible working conditions of workers at Shein, which is a fast fashion company that started in China. Jerry, what is one thought you had about this?
Reading about the worker conditions, so they're like only paid maybe $500 a month. They have 18-hour work days. The conditions are terrible. I know Jeff Bezos is salivating. I know he wishes he could do this.
Welcome to the Politically Asian podcast. We're just two Asian American comedians talking about politics and the Asian American community in hopes of getting more Asians to talk about politics. We're coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Aaron Yin. My pronouns are he, him, and you can find me on social media at Aaron Flarin. That's AARONFLARIN. And my co-host,
Hey, my name is Jerry Lim. My pronouns are they, them, and you can find me across the internet at Jerryaki. That's GERRIEYAKI.
Awesome. So we're going to start this podcast off with our opening segment, Practice What You Preach. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about politics, but it's also important to do things, which is why each week, Jerry and I share one thing we did related to politics or organizing in real life. This week, I'll go first. I did not do that much this week besides the regular Sunday mocha picket line, which I just came from outside the Museum of Chinese in America. It was a great turnout. We had about 18 people there, even though it was raining. We were still flyering and chanting for 3 hours. So yeah, it was a good time, but not too much besides that.
So no updates, no movement or anything?
About the museum?
Yeah. Just like any has anything been happening, whether good or bad, that kind of thing.
I mean, I'd say the biggest thing is with the museum schedules. So they were actually closed today, and their schedule's kind of in flux. Like they say they're only open on Saturdays, but their website still says they're open 5 days a week. So I guess on the museum side, there's a little bit of weird fluctuation going on, and it seems very inconsistent. Like to us, it doesn't really matter. Like we're still going to be there spreading the word, doing this boycott for now. So on the museum side, no. But sometimes picket is just picket, like part of a picket line. Sometimes there's nothing like flashy or exciting, and it's not like super dynamic every week. But I guess part of a picket line is just being there, right, and doing it and keeping it going.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not always about being flashy.
It's really
about
not
consistency.
Flashy. Yeah, I mean that's like the big difference, right? Like people love the big protests and the big marches that are like a one-day thing, and then you do nothing for the entire year. But pickets more of like a marathon,
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, what were you up to this week?
So I went to it's the weekly bashing of DSA. No, I did go to the DSA Healthcare Working Group meeting. Very interesting. I think I've talked before how the DSA website says that there are 90,000 members for the New York City branch, and 24 people showed up, which.
Oh, nice.
Which, you kind of just mentioned 18, but I feel like yours is like a consistent, and this was like, it was raining. This is like this is like 24 people on Zoom, Oh. Yeah.
And this was the Health Justice Working Group?
I think so. Healthcare Working Group, Health Justice is probably the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You seem less enthusiastic about it than I do. Okay, wait, so what did you so 24 people on a Zoom, and what did you all talk about?
Yeah, it's funny that you say I sound less enthusiastic, because I mean what we did talk about was something that I'm pretty passionate about. So we talked a lot about the New York Health Act, which, if you don't know, is the single payer system for all New York residents. It's the legislation that's first been proposed in like 1992, blah, 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 blah. For context, California passed something similar this year, except they actually passed it, meaning that pretty much everyone in California, regardless of like anything really, even citizenship, gets healthcare. And we don't have that here, and it would be cool if we did. And DSA's approach seemed to be based again in electoral politics, and it seemed like a lot of chess playing. Like they were outlining the plan to like find a candidate who could make the New York Health Act their central thing. And then that meant researching districts with a lot of uninsured people, preferably with an opponent who is against the Health Act. So I don't know. That seems like interesting.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about that?
That part, I'm like, okay, sure. I'm not sure how I feel about single issue candidates, but I know like for voters, people can be single issue voters. And I guess like the later plan is what kind of was like weird to me, is like they were just like, yeah, and then after we, get one, we just elect more and more. And I was like,
Interesting.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Interesting.
But the rest of the strategy was basically make sure like the public people know about the New York Health Act and that kind of thing. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Public awareness.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
Yeah. Or did they like assign any to-do items to you specifically, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
It's no, they did not assign me anything directly. They did not assign anything to anyone directly. They instead mentioned more meetings into smaller committees, including a communications committee, internal organizing committee, an electoral committee, and then a research committee, which would do all that research about finding a candidate and, researching districts and things like that. So,
Cool.
Yeah, further breaking down, I imagine there's going to be like 8 people at those meetings.
Yeah, I'm like, you only have 24 total. Right, you might just split it into groups of like 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, will you be going back to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, like, just because I feel like the New York Health Act is a pretty, I don't know, it'd be nice to have healthcare for everyone.
Yeah,
for
sure.
I think it would be really, really influential. Don't know if we'll see it, but I think I'll go back or go to, some of the other meetings that they've outlined, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, well, we'll keep seeing how it goes. Yeah.
All right, let's get into the meat of this episode. This week in Asian American news, New York City nail salon workers are finally getting ventilation systems in their workplaces. They say proper ventilation can protect their reproductive health, and we thought we'd cover this piece just because, 50% of nail salon owners are Vietnamese, and then a lot more, or not a lot more, and then some are owned by Korean folks. So, Aaron, what did you think of this article?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like many are owned by, broadly speaking, Asian people, right? In this article, they also cover South Asians. My first thought was I had no idea how harmful these chemicals were. This article starts off with a profile on one Nepalese woman who suffered 7 miscarriages in the span of 8 years while working as a nail technician. I'm like, whoa, that is really bad. And really depressing. I had no idea it was literally messing with, like to that degree. I thought it was just like, oh, these smells are bad. They give you a migraine, but, you'll be fine once you're back in the open. No, it's terrible. What did you think?
Yeah, that profile really stuck with me because, miscarriages aren't unheard of. I think the rate is like typically 10 to 15%, like 10 to 15 out of 100. But 7 in 8 years, isn't that like a rate of like 88%? I feel like that's like very, very bad.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And like you were saying, this study, they found that 25% of nail technicians had complications during pregnancy compared to just 8% in America overall. So they have 3 times the rate, which is really bad.
Yeah. And I guess like I'm kind of surprised we're just now getting around to this, I guess, just because, we kind of went through COVID, so I figured, we would have installed ventilation by now.
Yeah, no. Yeah, this whole article is so, it's not strange, but they passed these requirements for ventilation systems 6 years ago, and the deadline is just now. It was supposed to be last year, but it was pushed back another year because of COVID. So it's like all these places are now required to have one, otherwise they'll have to pay a fine. But I feel like for those 6 years, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of people. I feel like how long does it take to put in a ventilation unit into a place?
Okay, that part I can understand just because like I know HVAC is like a whole thing and it means like gutting
Yeah.
a building, that kind of thing. But still, I feel like I said, I feel like during COVID that that would have been your chance to do it as like the city reopened, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know.
I'm not surprised that that's the case in regards to like chemicals and nail, like you mentioned migraines and stuff, but I don't know. I can barely handle being around acetone, like nail polish remover. So I can
Oh
only,
yeah.
yeah, I can only imagine when you're like, I mean, like think about, I don't know if you've ever been to a nail salon, but like I know, like,
Nope.
I mean, me neither. I don't like the idea. I don't like it, but I am familiar with the concept, and I know, like, for example, you can use like a UV light to like, I think it's to like what's dry the glue or something, like activate the glue or whatever, for nails, and like just the various glues and chemicals you would put on your fingers. I can't imagine that's good for just like an individual, and I can't imagine being surrounded by that for eight plus hours,
Yeah. I'm sure, tons of Asian Americans who are young get their nails done a lot. And I kind of hope that this is a moment where they can get more involved in like Asian American workers issues or Asian workers
Ooh,
issues.
yeah.
Like, I guess, since the Atlanta spa shootings, we, started talking about salons in general. But I'm like, besides that, there's still so many different issues affecting workers on a day to day. And it's like, if you're shopping from these places and getting your nails done, you might as well care more about other aspects of the workers as well.
Right, because we're always talking about like, oh, representation matters. It's important that these people look like me. Okay, your salon worker looks like you. Care about them.
Yeah, I'm like, and their health is declining rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, to be fair, I'm sure when you're getting your nails done, your health is also declining a little bit, but not nearly as much as like a worker. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hope this is. I always think these stories are good opportunities for people to care more about workers and their circumstances.
Yeah.
All right. And speaking of workers and their circumstances, our next piece is also on workers. The title of this article that we're covering is called Gen Z Fast Fashion Comes at an Inhumane Cost to Shein Workers. So this is a profile that was first on The Cut, just talking about the terrible working conditions of workers at Shein, which is a fast fashion company that started in China. Jerry, what is one thought you had about this?
Reading about the worker conditions, so they're like only paid maybe $500 a month. They have 18-hour work days. The conditions are terrible. I know Jeff Bezos is salivating. I know he wishes he could do this. Like we were talking about like the warehouse fire the other week. I bet, these workers would have to work through that, and he could only wish to oppress his workers like this.
Yeah. It just sounds bad. And I've seen Shein headlines here and there. I'm like, oh, this company does not sound good. But when everything's put in one single article, it's like, oh, this is really not good. There was one paragraph in that Cut profile that was like, Shein has repeatedly come under fire for just about everything you can do wrong with the company, including poor working conditions, high levels of toxic chemicals in its clothing, copying independent designers' items, and mishandling customer data. I was like, yo, this is literally like Thanos, but for worker violations. And they're just collecting every possible thing they could do.
Yeah, I guess like what's next? Like what's going to stop them,
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Amazon. It's like, like people all know that Amazon is bad, but still a lot of people shop at Amazon, like myself included. And it's like with Shein, I don't know if this will be enough to encourage people to stop shopping from there. Like fast fashion in America, like fast fashion just has such a strong hold on America right now. Yeah. Well, what do you think?
I feel like the critique against fast fashion is like, oh, well, some people can't afford slower fashion, that kind of thing. But I feel like I've seen in an article that these aren't typically like low income people who are buying from Shein, or they're doing like straight up hauls where they're going to see like how much clothes they can buy for like X amount of dollars. And I don't know. I feel like that kind of behavior I don't think is going to go anywhere anytime soon,
Yeah, so you're saying it's like the people buy. I guess this also shows that I don't shop at all at Shein. I just read about it in the news. But it's like the people buying clothes at Shein are not, I don't know, like people who are like extremely low income. They're like maybe like middle income Gen Z people with lots of disposable income.
I wouldn't even say lots of disposable income, but I have shopped on Shein before. I'll come clean. I'll say it. It's actually hit or miss. I will say that I have a sweater from Shein that like I've worn, and I was like, I've had it for several years. It's genuinely a great sweater, but that's out of like dozens of clothes, right? I think it's like the only thing I still have that's like Shein.
Yeah.
I no longer shop at Shein just so I don't get canceled. I just want to make that clear. I don't shop at Shein. That said, it was fun to see like, okay, like how much could how many clothes, what could I get for $50, you know, like how many clothes, how many pieces, that kind of thing. Because like when you shop literally anywhere else, like I guess like a brand like, I don't know, Madewell, Everlane, whatever, a pair of jeans is maybe $50 to $80, and you could buy 10 pairs of jeans with that kind of, you know, when you shop at Shein, you could get. So it's hard. Like I don't know what the answer is. If you're not gonna raise minimum wage so people can buy other things, like of course they're gonna buy the cheapest possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's cool that high-end fashion is being democratized through Shein, but clearly part of the reason they can keep prices so low is because of worker exploitation, right? So it's like the people who are suffering are the ones, you know, making these clothes.
Yeah.
And truly just very, very long hours. I mean, 18-hour work days, 1 day off a month, people washing their hair during lunch breaks, and then the worst thing I read was, you know, you lose 2/3 of your daily wage if you make a mistake on one piece of clothing. That is seriously stressful.
Yeah, I'm trying not to make a joke about like Asian rigor and studying and that kind of thing, so I will refrain. I wanted to get your what you thought though. Like, do you feel like stuff like this is kind of almost whiplashy? Like, what does the media want Americans to think of Chinese people? Like, it's simultaneously like fear-mongering China while also making them feel sorry for the Chinese people.
That's a great question. When I read about Shein, I think a lot about people making jokes about Chinese people making iPhones. Like very similar concepts. Oh, like they're working long hours, and then sometimes people would say like, oh, it's Chinese kids making iPhones, and it's like I feel like at least with the iPhone situation, the concern was disingenuous. Like it was just for the sake of a joke, right?
Right.
And for Shein, I mean, this profile is bad, but I don't know if people will genuinely care about the conditions of Chinese workers, or is it just like a new punchline? I don't know. I mean, I'm not the right target person for this. Like that's a question I would pose to people shopping at this brand, but in my mind, I worry that it just is a new punchline. It's like, oh damn, you're working so hard. What are you, a Shein worker? You know, like that kind of thing.
I see. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of Americans, they don't care about the working conditions of Chinese workers because they're still reaping the benefits of the items.
Yeah.
Or like they don't care enough to give up the item. Is
yeah, like Nike.
Yeah, I didn't even know Nike had something going on, but
yeah, they have like sweatshops. It was like a whole thing when Kaepernick like became like the spokesperson model for them, and people were like, "Oh, you promote sweatshops." And I was like, "I don't."
Yeah.
The man has no job. Give him a break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like America really cares about. I mean, not even all Americans care about the plight of Amazon workers.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like they're at least more sympathetic when the workers are in the same country as opposed to like a distant land. You know, I don't know.
Asking Americans if they can place China on the map.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting because we covered, the FTC, one of the
FCC.
Yeah, banning Huawei, and I want to see them ban Shein and Romway and Zaful and all those other related companies. We'll see if they do anything.
So true, yeah. If Shein ever introduces any kind of technology into their clothes, America's going to start cracking down.
You can. I wouldn't say it's like high tech technology, but you can buy electronics off of Shein.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they sell keyboards and stuff. Not like great keyboards or anything like that, but I mean, it's there.
Wow, I'm surprised they're not on the list. That literally sounds the same as Huawei, just like a Chinese tech, being shipped to America.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just AliExpress with a prettier skin.
Yeah. Hey, if you're still listening to this podcast right now, thank you for making it this far. Just want to do a quick shout out, quick plug. If you like our podcast, please take a few seconds on your phone to go to Apple or Spotify and click 5 stars. That really helps us out. And if you really want to support us, also you can feel free to donate on Patreon at patreon.com/politicallyasian. We're currently raising money to provide episode transcriptions, get a video editor, and more. All right, back to the episode.
Well, moving on to the next item on the docket, we have BTS members enlisting in the military. Oh, no. And I will say, when I saw this item on our list, I started listening to BTS, and they really put out some bangers. I feel a little late to the game considering they won't get back together until supposedly 2025. But
Yeah.
Aaron, what did you think?
I mean, well, now that you mentioned song, they have that one song called Dynamite, and it's like, okay, now you might be using dynamite. It's like a very
Yeah.
interesting transition from pop star to potential soldier. I mean, my first thought when I read this was finally digging into, wow, like, why does South Korea still enlist, people into the military? And then apparently it's just to protect against a potential threat from North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I guess it's like, it just shows me how like geopolitical tensions like still exist even a lot after the main war, the Korean War, right? It's still just a consistent theme of like, oh, but what happens if this, if that? So let's be extra prepared.
Yeah, I remember reading that too, and I was just like, I just imagine like BTS doing their little dance on like the DMZ, just like, like,
Well, a lot of great memes. Yeah. Great memes on Twitter. A lot of funny content on Twitter about this. But yeah, I will say, after reading more into the mandatory service, apparently there are exemptions that currently only apply to decorated athletes. So, for example, athletes at the Olympics, and also top classical musicians.
Yeah,
So-
I saw that, and that made me laugh really hard. I was like, damn, if only y'all had picked a different genre.
Yeah.
If only your management company gave you instruments instead of like dancing lessons.
Yeah, exactly. If you were part of the orchestra or something, then you could be exempt. Yeah.
Oh man. It was really wild to hear like how much, because I know they generate a lot of money, but like I saw like one article say that between 2014 and 2023, it's expected that they bring in almost $30 billion for South Korea's economy. They have $1 billion this year in exported merch. Like, it's wild. Can you imagine, dude? Can you imagine if we put out podcast merch and that brought in $1 billion into the U.S. economy?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
wild.
crazy. People were literally bending over backwards. Like, I saw like lawmakers, ambassadors, tons of government officials were like trying to do something for them to get them to like not go into the military, to desperately find a loophole. And I read that like the extension that was given, and like if you're like a 28-year-old, there's like a 2-year extension for notable K-pop artists, was supposedly for Jin, like one man alone. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. They passed a law because of one dude.
Yeah.
And he wasn't like a serial killer. He wasn't like it was nothing bad. It was just like, we don't want him to follow this one law that we put in place. Like that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah, no, the amount of money every year is wild. So yeah, like on average in 1 year, they contribute about essentially 3 to 4 billion, maybe even 5 billion on the high side if we just, do the math. And it's like, so in 2 years of military service, South Korea will lose, let's say, about like $8 to $10 billion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way these 7 people are worth that much in terms of like military value, right? Like, you're giving up 8 billion of GDP for training these 7 people who I mean, I don't know how good they may or may not be as soldiers, but I'm like,
no, I think they're gonna kill it. I think they're gonna fucking rock in the military because K-pop training is intense. Like idol training is like really, really hard.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna kill it. Will they get bullied in the camp? I don't know. I feel like they also might get bullied, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure they'll kill it because anything that involves memorization might be like a piece of cake to them.
Yeah. You were saying like they bring in like 8 billion.
Yeah, it's about like 4 billion, 5 billion a year.
Yeah, so they're 2 years of military service, which is wild because I was like, and what? Like I know the U.S. spends like a gajillion, manillion dollars on our military. Like how much does Korea spend? Korea's like $40 billion.
Oh,
That's
wow.
like one fifth of their budget is like BTS.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, part of the reason a lot of critics still want to have BTS serve is because they don't want rich and powerful people to skip national duty for any kind of reason. And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I can respect that. It's tough to let BTS do this, but at the same time, I like the fact that like rich and powerful people are not getting exemptions. It's like the opposite in America. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, on one hand, like, I agree. On one hand, I agree. Yes, good. No loopholes for rich and powerful people. On the other hand, patriotism.
Oh,
scary.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. My final thought on this was I wonder what's going to happen to K-pop stans while BTS is in the military. There's no new music. Will the Korean wave sort of die down with like one of its anchors not here anymore? When another country's pop culture kind of come in over 2 years, right? That's a while. That was my final thought.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting take. I don't know. It's there's gonna be like a power vacuum in and then when they come back in 2025, it's gonna be Avatar: The Last Airbender theme music.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Melt the iceberg.
Yeah. Personally, I feel like Vietnamese food and Thai food are making waves right now. Now, I don't know about pop culture, but in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe one of those two groups will kind of,
You think a Southeast Asian group is gonna break through?
I mean, who else is there left? It's like I feel like East Asians in general have it down. South Asians have a lot of pop culture stuff going on in TV. Southeast Asians, I feel like that's like I can't really. I mean, I don't know. Rich Brian from 88 Rising, but that's not the best example.
Does he count?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you half of that's like a whole debate in itself, which we won't go too deep into. But like, I know in the Filipino community, we've been looking at Trader Joe's pumping out all this ube content, and we're like, hey. We're watching you. You better not avocado this up. We can't afford what happened to the avocados. Ube is ours. So we'll see.
We'll see. All right, and moving on to our next topic. This one also involves a star of a slightly different field. So Anna May Wong, she was known for being a Chinese American actress who sort of paved the way in Hollywood in the early 1900s. She is the first Asian American to be featured on U.S. currency, specifically the quarter. Jerry, what is one thought you had on this?
So many. Good. This is a good thing. Period. We have been thinking about being in movies for almost 100 years, which is a separate thought from the first one that I said. Aaron, your take.
Yeah, I was like, wow, our struggle for this has lasted a long time. So that puts, all of the Asian people who really care about movies into a little more perspective in the grand passage of time. Well, my first thought was how and where and why did this happen? And in summary, the U.S. Mint, which is responsible for making coins specifically, so not dollar bills, just coins. They started this program called American Women Quarters Program.
Cool.
And it's specifically designed to just put women on quarters and coins. And I'm like, who gave the U.S. Mint money to do this? And I feel like if you gave it to any other department, you could have, done something better for women over time.
Aaron, what do you mean who gave them money? They literally just made the money.
Okay,
What do you mean? We're going to pay ourselves to do this.
Yeah. I'm like, that's true. They just pay themselves in the coins only. But I'm like, I feel like the Treasury Department who prints dollar bills, I mean, if I had to pick a currency, I would have gone for a dollar bill because it's like, is this really a win for representation if no one uses quarters?
I mean, I feel like black folks have been trying to get Harriet Tubman on the bill for a while, and like, what happened to that? What has there been, like, literally what happened? I feel like I don't know where that campaign went. I just feel like I agree. Yeah, I feel like we could have done more for literally anyone than just putting our face on money, specifically coins.
Yeah. And about the Harriet Tubman $20 bill, it's still in the motions, but separately, Maya Angelou was put on the quarter, and people who are waiting for Harriet Tubman on the 20 were mad that Maya Angelou got put on the quarter first before Harriet Tubman on the 20.
Why?
Yeah.
I feel like coins are a little easier. I feel like we haven't seen anyone change on the dollar in a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I'm just like, it's like a win, but who uses quarters, and then it's currency overall. It could have been done better for any other group.
I won't say who uses quarters because, going cashless is a classist policy.
Yes, exactly.
All that. But I mean, I don't like the jingle jangle. I'll take it out when I come home. I'm never walking around with quarters,
Yeah.
So I do feel that. I guess, like, I was thinking, we could have picked literally anyone else, no offense, but like we could have picked a lot of different people, like Yuri Kochiyama and Edward Said, and like all the people that we talk about, Larry Itliong, like the labor organizer. But then, like, when I was like making that list because I was going to turn it into an infographic, I was like, you know what? They probably, and this is no shade to Anna May Wong, but I feel like they don't put really radical people on the coins because, like, it has to be something that's like palatable and tamer to a wider group of Asians, right? Like, I'm sure there were definitely Asians who were telling Yuri Kochiyama to shut the fuck up,
Yeah, for sure. And when I thought about this, I mean, this was, I guess, specifically targeted. It's a program for women on quarters, but I thought of like Haunani K. Trask. She's the native Hawaiian activist who often went viral on Twitter for her famous speeches like, "We are not Americans, like we are Hawaiian," like that.
Oh yeah,
that stuff's really radical to say out loud. And when I thought about people to put on quarter, I thought about her. But would America ever put her on a quarter? I don't think so.
I also feel like maybe she wouldn't want to be on a quarter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, this quarters program, they're releasing like 30 more. They're doing 5 per year for the next 4 or 5 years. So in the future, they could pick an Asian American woman who's more involved in like politics or something more serious. But for now, it's like they're starting with Anna May Wong.
It feels like to me, like, those Google Doodles that they put out when it's like a special day. It's like someone's birthday, someone's anniversary. It's like this famous inventor's thingamajig. I feel like it's like kind of like that. Will I be getting one of these Will I like try to find one of these quarters? Yeah, of course. But like it has, to me, it has like the cultural impact of like a Google Doodle. That is my truth.
Yeah. Because it's brief.
Yes, kind of, because it's like a fleeting moment where it's just like, look at this ching chong. Anyway, I'm gonna order, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I overall just feel like, like we are sort of going cashless, even if it's not like a good move overall. Like, I just feel like I really have trouble thinking about when the last time I looked at a quarter is. Like, I go to the laundromat and I put quarters in, but I never look even anymore.
So you do use quarters?
Yeah, I mean, I use quarters like twice a month. It's so infrequent that I like it. I don't know. I feel like they could have just picked anything else. But I will say one thing that I thought was good about this whole program was that it made me read more about who Anna May Wong was. And I think the funniest thing to me was she was constantly getting typecast in roles in America, and things were so bad in America in terms of film that she actually went to Europe and got better roles in Europe. as an Asian person. And I'm like, Europe, the one that like just the other day I was reading about how racist Sweden is, the one
Oh
where the
no.
UK is like conservative as fuck. And I'm like, it's just so funny that Europe was a place that treated her better than America.
I want to question what kind of roles did she get in Europe? Like, were they like putting really Orientalist movies out and they're like, we want this to be as accurate as possible, so we're going to cast an Asian person in it, like that kind of thing.
No, it was better than what she was getting in America. Dude, in America, the most famous line is she lost a leading role in a movie called The Good Earth, and she lost it to a white person in yellow face.
Cool.
I'm like, what the fuck? That's so insulting. But no, she had a better run in Europe, and then she came back later to do some more films in America.
Okay. Well, my hottest take, and maybe it's not that hot of a take actually, but I feel like they're kind of just doing this to placate the Stop Asian Hate movement.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
sure, yeah.
oh, y'all went out and did a little protest, did a little dance. Here's a quarter.
Yeah, keep the change, literally.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It is an East Asian. I think that's important to interrogate. Just like given the context of everything that's been going on the past couple of years, like it seems like, oh yeah, those people exist. Let's put them on a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am trying not to be too skeptical of this right now because they still do have a lot of quarters left. So, maybe next year when they start, their lineup of people will be more multidimensional.
That is the hope. Yeah. All right. Well, closing out this episode, we're going to cover the last item on the docket. New York officials are trying to keep videos of homicides and other violence off the internet. Aaron, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so my first thought was, does this include videos of cops? And in short, no, I don't think it includes that. This is mainly for like white supremacists and like teens on like 4chan and Discord writing manifestos. And I think it's good that they're keeping this off the internet because it does seem like, future shooters are sort of taking inspiration or like learning from past events. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's good that we're trying to scrub this before it propagates a lot.
Okay.
But it does seem like a challenge to moderate this kind of content, like we talked about previously with Google and algorithms. So I'm not sure how effective the law will be, but I think the effort is good.
That's interesting. I actually thought the reverse, though I hear your point about giving potential shooters like inspo and stuff to put on their vision board. I feel like we have difficulty getting videos from cop body cameras. And I feel like, being able to have like eyewitness accounts and security accounts are very important. Like there was like the whole thing with like the Alex Jones trial, right? Like people were like, he was able to propagate that like that didn't happen, that it was a hoax. And I worry that like if this goes far enough that there is a future where something like this happens again, but people are like, oh, that grocery shooting never happened. Like that kind of thing, Like where's the proof?
So you're saying because they restrict it, then people may not believe it that it happened.
Yeah.
Okay. That is a good point and also a very scary point to think about. But I can see that especially in an age where, anyone can have a platform. There's so much disinformation, intentionally spread to mislead or lie. Now I'm thinking like, okay, we shouldn't ban it from the internet, but it should just be released and put into this special vault where people can still access it, but just not, not be allowed to
no
spread.
Screen recording.
Yeah.
like whatever Netflix does, we need to do that.
Yeah. It's like the container of forbidden knowledge that like, if we need to pull up receipts, it is there, but otherwise it does not escape from this box.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting move, given that we've covered before that the subways will have cameras now, right, to like film attacks, blah blah blah. They can't be monitored live. It's literally just to like, this is evidence. And it's interesting because critics are like, oh, like you guys are gonna use that video to make like fear-based propaganda. And then it's interesting that like they're saying, in regards to like videos like this, like homicides and mass shootings and things like that, they're trying to reduce that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, overall, it's like I would want to know, does limiting this stuff actually limit people from trying to do this in the future?
Right.
Like that's what I have no idea about, and it doesn't really mention that in their reasoning. It's like kind of like hypothesis right now.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll kind of see how it goes. This whole thing was just based around New York and New York State and the Buffalo shooting specifically. So yeah, it may not carry out to different states across the country. But I will say for now, I was surprised by what is legalized right now for public broadcasting. Like the Buffalo shooter, he streamed it on Twitch. And then he wrote the manifesto on Discord. And I'm like, what the? And Discord's own moderators were like, oh, we did not catch this because of XYZ. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, how do you we use a Discord. How do you write a manifesto in Discord? Like, why would you not use Google Docs? You know, like why Discord? I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm just like, this stuff is, he's literally giving you the evidence on a silver platter and no red flags went off. That is an alert for me. So like I have lower trust of Twitch and Discord after this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be, we can always speculate about like, oh, like they're going to make fear-based propaganda and blah, blah, blah. And will it stop shooters? But like, ultimately it goes back to the question, can government regulate tech companies, tech as a platform? You know, just because New York says, hey, you can't do this, like, how is TikTok gonna do that for New York and then not the rest of the country, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-mm. Yeah, we'll see though. You know, as with all of these laws, it's like so early, and it's just that first article that gets people talking, like we're talking about it right now. But whether anything will happen, like we'll probably have to check in on this in like half a year.
Yeah.
All right. And that's our episode for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can first find us on Instagram at Politically Asian Podcast or on Twitter at Politic Asian Pod. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars on either one of those platforms. It really helps us out. All right. Thanks for listening, and
Bye.
bye.